What if pain isn't the problem, but actually the pathway back to you? You're listening to The Leadership Wound, From Pain to Permission. I'm Amanda Rohr, your host and founder of Authentically You, coaching for embodied spiritual living and leading. This is where we get honest about the real cost of leadership, the burnout, the pretending, the rejection, and the return to your authentic self. Because this isn't about performance, it's about permission. Welcome to the leader you've always been. Usually like to define leadership in that realm of like influence, but lately over the past couple of months, I've also been using this word of investing. Leadership is investment, and it's investment in people, and wherever you have people, it's messy, it's hard. But when you invest in someone, the return on that is exponential. Welcome back to The Leadership Wound. I'm your host, Amanda Rohr, and this is where we talk about the part of leadership that no one prepares you for. In today's episode, it is a part of our Unscripted Conversation series. It's a space I create for leaders to step out of performance and into honesty and speaking openly about how leadership has shaped their faith and their sense of self, including along the way what has stretched them and even the wounds that they have gotten along the way. Each unscripted conversation moves through 4 movements. The first is, how do we understand what leadership really is? And then the second, what does authenticity look like in the real world? What does leadership cost us? And then lastly, what have we learned along the way in our healing journey? Because when leaders gather together and tell the truth about how their leadership experiences have been, it really does give permission for others to do the same. And today I am so excited to have my good friend Ryan Cagno, a part of our podcast. Ryan is a very impressive person. He is a pastor within the Brethren in Christ Church who works also in Harrisburg Brethren in Christ Church. He serves with a non-traditional church plant called the Holy District Network. And if that was not enough, he also leads our denominational internship program. So he lives literally right at the intersection of the local church ministry, innovation for church expression, and denominational formation. Ryan is someone who loves envisioning new ideas. I have experienced this myself with him, and also helping to bring those to life, not only for himself, but for others. He's especially gifted at walking alongside of people in that process. He is an ideation person, which I'd love to hear his definition of what all that means. Theory crafting in the realm of leadership, and thinking bigger picture, helping build things before they exist. When he's not working and doing those things, he's usually reading, watching basketball, or chasing his 2 young children around the house. Ryan, I'm so glad that you have decided to come on to our podcast. Welcome to The Leadership Wound.
Thanks for having me. I think we should end now, just with all those nice things that you have said.
That's very impressive.
I don't want to, all that could be done now is to sully the impression that you've set up.
Sully the waters.
Yeah.
Well, you live in this pretty unique leadership ecosystem, like I said. The local church, expressions of what church can actually look like beyond what is the norm, and as a denominational leader within our Brethren in Christ, forming people. In all 3 of those things, you have the opportunity to influence not only things, programs, structures, but more importantly, people. So I want to start with this question first. How has your understanding of leadership been shaped by working in those unique settings?
Yeah, this phase of work and leadership for me over the last 4 years has really, I think many people probably would define leadership in some sense as like influence, right? But the way that influence has functioned in this last 4 to 5 years has been behind the scenes, has been functioning in that way, coming alongside, coming behind others. You know, a lot of the work that I'm doing is about getting other people in the positions to do and to serve and to lead in their own right. So whereas in the season prior to this, where I was serving in a large church preaching once to twice a month, very, very visible
Mm-hmm.
for a number of years in this church. It was still influence, but it was very different. It was kind of this kind of top down, you're the spearheading
Mm-hmm.
kind of. And whereas now, I don't think if I'm doing my job right, I'm not really seen
Mm.
very much at all. And so it's not necessarily leadership exercise through words, through public speaking, through public example, as much as the behind the scenes strategic thinking and then figuring out how best to equip others to do. So that has been reframing for me to some degree certainly what leadership means, what it means to lead in any organization and in the church.
Yeah. What was maybe when you think back to when you began in your leadership journey, what were some models that you experienced versus now what you're experiencing in leadership models?
Yeah, I mean, most of the models that I had seen were going to be like the kind of the strong man
Mm.
version. I don't know if it'd be quite the words you would want to put to it, but I think you
Yeah.
know what I mean. I'd been in most settings where a strong solo leader that was fully setting the vision and direct, or at least seen to be fully setting the vision
Yeah.
and direction of an organization, of a church. Um, in a lot of ways patterned after, how we conceive of presidential politics in this country to some degree, whether or not it's actually true.
Mm-hmm.
Um, looking to, the strongman as a figurehead and as the general at the front of the
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
army, as it were.
Which definitely does not allow a lot of people to even conceive themselves as a leader, if that's your definition of a leader.
Sure. Yeah. It's a very, very narrow funnel, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And the task was just totally different, right? So in a church of 700-800 people, when you're a leader, the most natural way for that to function is to just be at the front and surging ahead and kind of saying like, this is what we're doing, where we're going. And, out of that 800, a subset of people are really going to like kind of follow and
Right.
there's hundreds of folks at the edges that are going to kind of like not be engaged and are going to kind of filter and change over year on year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in a much different setting now, especially in the local church setting where I'm serving, where it's not a small church, but it's a much more kind of stable, slower moving congregation with a lot of different moving parts. It's just way less of an ethos of like, we're just, as pastoral leadership, like, this is where we're going. Come on, everybody.
Yeah.
It's much more, there's just 1,000 different things going on. And the emphasis is on trying to facilitate and bring some organization to a lot of the energy and initiative coming up from the congregation, which is just a very, very different task.
Mm-hmm.
It's very
Yeah.
assistive. It's very complementary too. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a lot harder.
Yeah. Well, that's true. It is a lot harder. And I usually like to define leadership in that realm of like influence. But lately, over the past couple of months, I've also been using this word of investing. Leadership is investment, and it's investment in people. And wherever you have people, it's messy, it's hard. But that's the lasting, when you invest in someone, the return on that is exponential.
Yeah. I think that's a really good clarification for it. And I kind of think that first image of, the strong man at the front leading people on and them kind of following in his wake. This might be too strong of language, but it's almost dehumanizing in a sense, because it's just kind of, as soldiers are dehumanized to some degree, right? And just become kind of like faceless members of this crowd, all moving in this direction.
Yeah.
Versus the leader looking back and looking in to the people that he or she is leading, and to really honor and acknowledge the humanity of a person, and to invest in that person in sensitive ways, in ways appropriate to who they are and where they are on their journey.
Yes.
Takes so much more time
Mm-hmm.
and thoughtfulness and pain and work.
And discernment.
Yeah,
In
to try and handle someone and to handle someone, discern and just work with them with all of their rough edges.
Yeah.
Versus we're all going this direction. I feel like that kind of maybe smooths over the rough edges or doesn't give people a chance to live into the fullness of what God has for them, at any rate, as an individual.
I heard early on this kind of metaphor about how you can tell a good leader by if they lead and they leave, that
Yeah.
what they have done continues on because the people have either bought into it or they themselves are now a part of it and they are doing it. Versus if you, as a leader, leave and everything kind of falls apart.
Hmm.
The legacy of a leader really is it continuing on and it morphing and changing along the way because people now have come in, stepped in, and they've used their giftings to see it versus it just all kind of falls apart with solo leadership. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm actively trying to leave now in the current,
Work
local
yourself
church
out of a
job.
job, Ryan.
What'd you
Yes.
say?
Work yourself out of a job.
I'm saying, yeah, actively with, teams that I've set up or things that I've done, I'm quiet quitting before, before actually quitting in terms of, okay, this thing doesn't need me anymore. This thing doesn't need me anymore. Cause it's the right thing to do. That's what leadership is. It also
Yeah.
really stinks to move on from a place and see like the thing you've been doing for years, just like in 2 weeks, fall away to nothing. That's not a great feeling. So selfishly as well, it's like you should want the stuff that you work on you to be able to outlast if it's if it's worth
Yes.
outlasting and if it's meant to, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I can remember a couple jobs where I left and people took my positions because hopefully I trained them well enough to do that and they've taken it into different directions. So it's good. I remember, yeah, one of my good friends said, Amanda, you need to work yourself out of a job.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And that's investment in people. So this concept of you being a builder or an idea person, tell me a little bit more about what that means and how that shapes how you.
Sure. Yeah. I think so years ago now, 8 years ago, 8 years, Amanda, when I came into the church where we were serving at together in
Yes.
2018, and you had me do the like Clifton Strengths Finders, I think.
Yeah.
And this is when I realized how unbalanced of a person I was because all 5 of my top 5 strengths were in like the strategic thinking
Yeah.
side of things as opposed to, the other soft skills related to ministering and caring for people. Yeah, so that's just where I operate at my best is, sitting alone with a whiteboard or with someone else with a whiteboard and kind of just thinking through what could be, what ought to be, what isn't yet, which lends itself well to being a behind the scenes leader for sure. Being able to generate the new ideas, being able to critically evaluate what's happening. That's how I'm wired to operate, which can be really helpful if it's slotted into that and can be really disruptive to myself and to those around me if I'm put in a position where I'm someone's wanting me to just maintain or to be like I'd be a bad chaplain, I'd be a bad care pastor, I'd be a bad middle manager.
Yeah.
Just required to carry things out and even in my position of having the opportunity to build teams, build things, create new ministries and ideas, it can still get me into the trouble of like some things don't need to be tinkered with every 6 months and they need more time. Things need more than,
Some things are complete.
yeah, some things take a long, long time and more time than I'm necessarily interested in giving to them, to be really frank. So
Yeah.
part of the working myself out of the job it's not like a noble thing for me. It's by the time I've finished formulating the idea, I'm already like bored with it and never want to.
Yeah. Yeah. You're ready to move on. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't want to say it too crassly, but it's the most natural thing for me to be like, please someone take this because that's my role in the scheme of things, but I'm not going to be the one that's really faithful year over year, just continuing to do it as it is. And some things do need just that consistency.
Yeah. Well, I love your honesty because I always think when you have leaders who are very self-aware of what their gifts are and how they're wired and all that, they are just they're experiencing freedom, number one, and able to help others. But when you peg yourself into, I have to be this leader who is the be all end all to everybody, then that's when you get the stress and you're not working well with people. And it also, when you really have really good self-awareness, it helps you to be able to communicate to other people. Hey, just so you know, I'm the one to help you create this idea. I'm going to be there with you for a while, but then I'm going to get bored of it. And it has nothing to do with you. And I say that, kind of funny, but because I have some other good friends who are kind of have that unique quality as well. And if you look at their resume, you might think, oh my gosh, this person can't stick in a job very long. And that's not it at all.
Yeah, no. I've had people speak that kind of word of grace to me at times for sure. Cause I'm like, so March 1st will be like my 4 year at HBIC and at NextGen. And it's like, that's a new personal record for me by at least a year. And, for as much as I look at my family of origin. I have one grandfather that worked for the Lipton factory for 50 years. And then I have another grandfather that did 17,000 things and moved to 14 states. And yeah, I guess I just some people are wired different. But I think, I think what you're saying is really good and important of not being the end all be all. And I'm sure your podcast is oriented towards not just folks in ministry, but
yeah.
That's my context. And in my context, something really unfortunate has happened where every possible role within the church in terms of ministering has been boiled down to pastor. And a really important shift that's happened in the last 15, 20 years is people have gone back to Ephesians chapter 4 as a leadership paradigm and looked at how it talks about Christ giving as gifts to the church, the apostles, prophets, evangelists, shepherds, and teachers. So, people have taken this more specifically maybe than Paul ever intended, but have delineated at least five different types of leadership to function within the church that are more specialized, right? You got folks that are the idea people, you've got the teachers, you've got people oriented towards care, you've got people oriented towards reaching out. And in the early church, we just see a host of different functions. Mm. And at some point along the way, all of this got boiled down to just pastor, who does everything, who is supposed to be the teacher and the visionary CEO and the person that goes to visit people in the hospital.
Yeah.
And on and on. And the reality is, if you're in the hospital, I don't want to visit you. Just kidding.
Sure you do, but you might not like it.
I will do it. I won't love it. I will ask someone else on staff to do it first. Yeah. That's a bit facetious, but nonetheless, the point stands.
That concept is also very applicable to outside of ministry, for sure. So it's really good to be self-aware and know what your giftings are, and then surround yourself with the team, because it's not healthy to be that be-all, end-all, solo kind of leader for yourself. It's incredibly unhealthy for yourself because there's all these expectations and you're not functioning in the way you're created. But it's incredibly unhealthy for the group, the family, the business, whatever you want to say, the church. It's incredibly unhealthy for them.
For sure.
To
Absolutely.
see one type of leader, to see one gender of leader in leadership. It's just, we are made in the image of God. And the last time I checked, there ain't one person who can show what the image of God looks like or function in the world that way. And yet our models of leadership are so hierarchical, so singular focused. So it has to look one way. It's to the detriment of people, the people that you're investing, because the people you're investing in don't look one way either.
Right. No, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I can't do all the things. And the church doesn't need another white male person to look at as the savior and do everything person.
Yes. Which could be a whole nother podcast. So one of the core themes in my own coaching and teaching is this word authenticity, learning to live and to lead a life that is truly representative of who God says we are, rather than who we think we are or who people think we are. And honestly, in my own journey, and I'm sure you could attest this to yourself, Ryan, as well, it's taken a while to be able to express what our authenticity really looks like in both our living and our leading. For me personally, I noticed as I began this journey that I often looked externally all the time, looking outside of myself for people to tell me how I should be living and leading, until I finally, the light bulb went off, or it was more of a progression. Now, wait a minute, I don't need someone else to give me permission to be who God has commissioned me to be, called me to be, created me to be. And so I just want to ask you personally, in the roles that you are building or that you have led and cast in vision, how do you stay connected to your real authentic self? And then how are you leading other people into that?
So you know me well enough to know that, that's an interesting question. I was going to say it's not too hard for me to be my authentic self, or in a certain sense, at least. I think I can convey authenticity in the sense that I'm not much for, I should probably censor myself more than I typically do. So the growth edge for me, if it would maybe be like tightening it up more so um than not in a certain sense.
Well, you mentioned that's just even speaking your authentic self, but being your authentic self could be a whole different ball of wax.
Yeah. I think because especially in being in a leadership role where I'm coming alongside other people, it can be very easy for me to conform to external expectations, conform to what others need, and not toward what I need or what I think I should be doing. And in some cases, that can be appropriate. I've learned about myself that it does come from being a people pleaser, being an oldest child, and having some things in my family where I learned to fill in gaps as I saw them and to carry emotional loads that were not mine to carry. And so there is a danger for me, for sure, in as I recognize those needs around me now in ministry, to not always conform to meet them, because it hurts me, and because like that's not necessarily good leadership, to just be what other people need you to be. Like sometimes people need to just like hear the truth. Then sometimes people need to feel the consequences of their course of action. So yeah, that's something that I wrestle with a lot, and when I've talked in the past, even the past 6 months with my therapist, and he's asked me, like, okay, but like, what do you want? Not like you ran down the list of things you think are good or think would be right, or what this person said and what this person said and what this person said. Well, like, what do you want? And it was surprisingly difficult to answer that question. And there's been times, increasingly where that has been. And that's something I'm kind of investigating in myself. I don't quite know what to make of that. I don't
Yeah, I
know
was
if I
just
have a
gonna
fully
say,
formed, like,
if I was going to push you on that a little, because I think that's really important for our audience and those who are listening. Why is it difficult for us to be connected? What's at the root of that? And I don't mean you personally, but maybe in general too. What's at the root of the fact that we have difficulty naming what we really want? And all we hear is maybe the voices of what other people want.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure it's any number of things. I think one thing for me is, there's a personal tendency towards self-doubt, and being suspicious of myself and my motives and what I'm doing in the world. And I think that was I think that's in me, but I think that also was reinforced by some of the church environments I grew up in, theological environments, doctrinal emphasis on, humanity is fallen and sinful, and like what comes natural to us cannot by default is bad and wrong.
When you start from that starting point, that is a whole different trajectory.
Yeah, you basically you're just led to believe and think like, if it's coming out of me, it should be rejected.
Yeah.
It's
and
wrong.
Yet before the fall was something else.
Right.
I think
and that's the hard thing, is it's like it's a mixed bag, right? We are beautiful creations that are fallen.
Yeah.
And so learning to parse out in yourself and not whiplash between like either fully Calvinistic, like everything in you is utterly sinful, or on the other hand,
that everything that comes out is great.
Everything that comes out is great, and I am the arbiter of what's good and true and holy, and like if I feel something, I should utterly go for it. That's also not true. So you just need to have like wisdom and discernment. But as someone who has tended towards one end of that spectrum, the work for me is to learn, when can I actually trust my own instincts on things? When can I trust that this path that I'm feeling led to walk down, that others don't see or understand or think I should, when do I need to do that anyways? That's the growth point for me.
That's perfect, because I love that. Sometimes people, like, when they hear that language of like getting connected with yourself or giving yourself permission, they will automatically go towards the one side. And I'm like, no way, Jose. I mean, it is actually more difficult to do the inner work. And that's what it requires, because there has to be discernment about your shadow sides. There needs to be discernment about your weaknesses, your blind spots. That's the hard work.
Yeah.
But sometimes people are like, well, I just won't trust myself at all. Well, that is just as sinful as the next, you know? There has to be this work. And it grieves me to think, and I see this sometimes when I'm talking with people, this skepticalness of themselves. There's a healthiness to that, but why is that the first thought? Why is the inner critic so strong in some of us?
Yeah, I think part of it is just also tied to being a leader. I think, there's a certain sense of just exposure and isolation in that role that I
Well,
think
God
can,
forbid if you make a mistake, Ryan.
yeah,
That's the other point. I think you said it is tied to our leadership, but when we have such a high value of ourselves in a bad sense, do you know what I mean? Like
mhm.
we have to do it all, or I have to think of it all. Then there's all this pressure. I had Dr. Tony Blair was on my podcast once, and he's talked about that. At the beginning of his journey, there was so much pressure on himself to be perfect.
Yeah.
So I'm so glad you mentioned that about how it ties in.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it can just be really, I think there is a lot of self-doubt inherent to functioning in a leadership role. And I want to trouble those waters a little bit and say, I almost think that's good and necessary. And I think
Mm-hmm.
if you're a good and sensitive leader, you ought to be I would hope you're dealing with some of that. I would hope that you're not.
Wrestling with some of that. Yeah.
Yeah, otherwise you're just a tyrant or a tyrant in the making, right? I mean, I know
Yes.
plenty of like bad leaders that aren't actually leading,
Mm,
who are never doubting themselves, or apparently not. They're apparently never doubting themselves, their decisions, etc. They're soldiering on,
yeah.
barreling on, and trampling people in the midst.
Yeah.
So I'd want to trouble those waters and say, like, I don't think leadership involves necessarily the eradication of self-doubt, but a way to helpfully manage and healthily manage it
Yeah.
as it comes.
Mm. Do you have any practices or anything, healthy boundaries that helps you monitor when you feel like I'm operating out of authenticity or I am not?
I mean, I can feel it, I think. I mean, it just saps me. And those are times where I need to wipe off the calendar for a day and be totally by myself and peel back some layers and get back to a sense of connection with
Yeah.
myself and with God. And I think that's really important to do as frequently as possible, but certainly I'm forced into it at times. Just that time alone to, I think you have to be doing that pretty constantly, just re-clarifying for yourself. What do I believe here? Where do I think we all need to be going? And how do I sensitively move forward in that? But really, even just the what do I believe here
Mm,
question is just so important to continue to come back to and do the work of re-clarifying. Otherwise, you'll get kind of, I think, tossed in the waves, and then you're not really leading anymore. You're just
yeah.
kind of caught up in everyone's chaos.
Yeah. That's so good. I mean, you have to put in that time to pause. And I was just this morning sitting with the Lord and naming my feelings. And I'm like, I feel rushed. I feel hurried. Okay. So where's that coming from? And for me personally, it came from, oh, okay. I recognize I'm trying to do this out of myself.
Mhm.
And the more that I pause for clarity to come, like you just said, the more I recognize, oh, that's a pattern that I don't want to continue. But if you don't have those built-in pausing, stopping times, you just soldier on.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, let's move now into like the hidden cost, like what they didn't prepare you in seminary, right? I mean, did you have a course called All That You Will Experience and What You Won't Like About Leadership? Was that on the syllabus?
Listen, I went to like an impractical seminary. We'll just say that. So there was like one course on pastoral ministry like per year.
Yeah.
So no, I was not prepared in school for leadership in any capacity, and never mind like what it would cost.
Well, so you got it at the School of Hard Knocks, I bet, the
That's
real
right. That's
experience.
right.
And hopefully you had
The
people along
streets.
the way, the streets. So part of my just mission and why I felt led to really start this podcast is because I want to become more and more unapologetic about creating space for leaders to acknowledge the fact that they are human and that they have wounds. I mean, I have not yet met any leader who does not have a story about some type of wounding. And it doesn't have to be a wounding that's so, tragic or huge from somebody else. Maybe it's just an organizational wound or a wounding that you yourself are placing on yourself because of expectations. But there are so many leaders who are carrying pain that are not processed because they feel like they're abnormal. So, Ryan, I mean, have we been wounded?
Yes, Amanda.
Oh my
Like
God.
at the same time, or
Well, we won't go into any of that, but I mean, we're humans. We have wounds, and they don't disappear if you ignore them. And in fact, I have heard of several leaders leaving, either churches or leaving organizations because, yeah, they just weren't able to process or have people to help process them along, and so they're leaving altogether the ministry and going out into the secular field. And it just breaks my heart because number one, being human and being a leader means you're going to be wounded. So it's normal. It's like, can we just normalize this conversation? You're not abnormal.
do you think
So
that's just because you're a human, or do you think there's something inherent to leadership where you're open to woundings?
Well, I think both, actually. I think as humans, unless you're a monk and you're living by yourself, you interact with people. And any time that you interact with people, there's going to be woundings because no one is perfect. So it's the rubbing. But you get into leadership and there is the opportunity, the privilege of investing and influencing other people. And if you're doing it well, it means that there will be some forward thinking, some challenging, some seeing into people's lives. And if you're doing it well, it will stir up things because that's also what good leaders do. They stir up things. Now, we're not trying to be a wrecking ball or anything like that, but when you get people together, especially within leadership, there is this opportunity to wound. So if you feel comfortable, maybe just sharing where one of your woundings was, what exactly was it? And we don't need to go into details or anything, but yeah, express a little bit.
Yeah. How to share it sensitively and appropriately is the question.
Yeah.
I've absolutely have been wounded on a few different occasions. I think so. One of them would have been years ago when I was still in seminary and serving in a church. And basically, so I was, I had interned there, and then I worked there for a few years part time while I was in school. And there was a lead pastor and assistant pastor who was like did youth and worship and stuff, and basically was just there through a kind of protracted and at times ugly like divorce between these two men, like a work divorce, just for me to be clear. And yeah, and I think I was wounded by that. I've never been the child of a divorce, so I don't know how it felt, but just being kind of caught in the middle of this, I was wounded just by these two men just sharing with me things they shouldn't have shared, like, triangulating and making me party to like their frustrations with the other one, and kind of caught in the middle of this. And even went on like some kind of weekend like vision retreat with like the two of them about the church, and like ended up just being in the position of mediator. And I was like 26 years old, still like getting through school. I shouldn't have been put in that position. And I recognize that now. And there was a wounding to that. And then my first church job out of school, different type of wounding in some ways. Very early on, there were a lot of expectations put on me very early on, as you know, within like months of starting. There were strong expectations put on me, and I was ready for them. I was like, I loved that place. I was eager, and for them to put these high expectations on me and say, not in a way of like, we're expecting a lot of you rigidly, but more like, you're going to be here a long time, and you're going to like have this place of prominence in this church, and you're going to, it puffed me up a lot, and I was ready for that. I was newly married. I was out of seminary. This was my first big boy job, and I was like, I was drinking it up with the straw, every bit of that affirmation and that expectation. And then COVID happened, and like things flipped on a dime like that. Other things happened before that, which certainly were starting to disabuse me of some things. But COVID happened, and and I went from, in the course of a few months or even a few weeks, went from being kind of propped up and gassed up in those ways to recognizing suddenly I was on the outside of the camp.
Mm.
I was on the other side of the. I thought I was an insider, and I realized I was in fact not.
Mm.
And took years then to kind of process that
Yeah.
and to realize there was a two-layered wounding there. And the one layer of it is that that expectation shouldn't have been laid on me so early, I don't think.
Mm.
And being, told with a certain sense of like definiteness, people's plans for me or my fate within the organization. But then the second layer of wounding of just like things flipping on me and me being persona non grata so quickly was its own layer of wounding that was kind of exacerbated by the fact that, to have a supervisor who, March 1st, 2020 was saying like, you're going to succeed me and I'm going to coach you through like the interviews with the board, to, June 2020, I'd be surprised if you were still here by Christmas, were like the words said to me. And part of me was like, yeah, I'd love to not be here by Christmas based on how things are currently going. But the other part of me was like, what? Like,
What just
nothing
happened?
is changed. Like, nothing substantive has changed here.
Yeah.
And yet that was a wound that it took, that and then just what that meant for my connections to that place and those people.
Yeah.
Has taken years. I think I was a few years into working at HBIC before I think I really woke up and that one stopped actively throbbing.
Yeah. I'm trying to think, is there a thread between the two? Like, so the first one you're talking about being put in a position that was awkward, inappropriate, not looking out for the best of you, these two people, and then swinging over to the other wounding and seeing expectations being put on maybe too quickly, or this is what we need of the person at the moment. So it wasn't,
That's probably why. Yeah, I mean that's felt used, I'm sure in some sense, like
yes,
in the latter case, like, oh, like I was there, a parent, when it seemed
yes,
like that would work out for you, but
yeah.
or what
And
was
I think
needed.
that's actually, as I'm talking out loud, because I'm an external processor,
Mm-hmm.
just seeing the thread of the two. I mean, tell me if there's
Yeah,
any hint of this, but like there's this awareness from people outside of yourself that they are not really looking out for the benefit of you. Like we talk about God as being, benefactor in his love towards us. We know that he has the best for us. And yet we experience people who are to be carrying the presence of the Lord, and they are not doing that. Is that part of the wounding? Is that in those scenarios, other people were not looking out for the best for you?
absolutely. Yeah, I think
And
if
what
that
did
was
that do to you?
yeah. Yeah, I mean it has left me now, I wouldn't say mistrustful, but it certainly, it was a growing up experience for me, and how I would relate to supervisors now is different for sure. And I still have them, and it's not like I don't trust them. I do, in the ways that I need to for sure. But certainly, if one of them came to me and said like, "This is what I see for the next 5 years," or "This is what I see in you," and I would say, "Well, we'll see."
Yeah.
I don't say "we'll see" out loud necessarily, but in my own head, I'm like, okay, no, this is like, I think there's a healthy version of this and a wounded version of this, but like, yeah, there can be a healthy open-handedness of just like, yeah, we'll see. Like in the end, I'm not going to go back to that place where I was young and insecure and needing to latch on to some promised future. Like I don't need that anymore.
Yeah.
I was disabused of that, right? That was that the ability to trust in that was taken away from me, right? I went from being the heir apparent to within a year resigning and driving a truck and staying home and not knowing if and when I'd get back into ministry. And that was a really dark time for me, the staying home especially. And I had to come to terms with like, okay, like whatever the people above me or around me are promising, like we don't actually know
Mm.
if any of that will come to be, and that's okay. And so if they want to speak in those terms, that's on them. But I will hold that more loosely, not in a way of totally mistrusting them, but that's definitely part of it. And I think the story, if I was gonna look at a through line, it's just like be careful with the people that you're leading. I was a young leader in those scenarios, but I was also like being led and influenced greatly by those, and I was learning. And there were times, at least, where I think when you're leading someone else, I think priority needs to be placed on investing in the person being led. That is the sacrifice of leadership. Part of the wounding comes in the fact that the call of being a good leader is to put others before yourself and to think of what's best for them first versus what you need, which is something I bang home all the time in the internship program. Like interns are not cheap labor for you. If you don't feel like you can give to the point where you are investing in this person as a person and in their well-being and their development, then like don't invite this on, right? And by the same token, I think I felt like I was a piece just being moved around of some broader things.
Yeah.
And in the first case of like the divorce situation, I don't think it was less conscious and pointed for sure on their part. We all would have done things differently there, but
well, you speak to a natural human thing of like us growing. So like when we're children, we don't even know what distrust is. Like we just think that we think our parents are great, we think all adults are great, we think there's this just childlike trust and faith.
And if they tell me we're going to the zoo tomorrow, we're going to the zoo tomorrow.
Yeah, or I'm going to get ice cream at the end of the day. This is what's going to happen.
Exactly.
There's just this naivete. And until we get into the real world, and so some of your experiences are a bit extreme in the sense of like difficultiness. But I think in general, we all experience this waking up to, wait a minute, I thought my boss had my best interest at heart. I mean, should they? For sure. And yet they really have this dual role, like, of course, people first and investing, and yet they have an organization or a church or something to run. And so there's this blending of the two. But I think what I love you mentioned is that as a leader, there is just a high priority in the fact that you are dealing with people's lives. And if you're constantly thinking about the bottom line or what will be best for the organization, then you're not really looking at the actual person.
Yeah. When you're leading, people are not means to ends, right? They are ends in themselves.
Yes.
The mission is never beyond, at least in the church. I can't speak to other things. I know that, if you're running a large business, there's
should be people first no matter what.
You have certain bottom lines. But as much as possible, people are not tools for achieving ends. They are not obstacles to achieving ends. Like people are the ends. They are the mission.
Yeah. So, okay, let me get practical here. If you were able to do this again, or you found yourself in a similar circumstance where you were the boss, what kind of examples could you give of how to handle that differently or how to coach leaders? Because I love how you mentioned some is unconscious and some is conscious. When you talk about those two different scenarios, how can you help leaders to be able to not make that mistake? Because there are leaders out there who are probably teetering on the edge of wounding someone else.
Yeah, and I think I've done it. I mean, I think I've turned around and I've had interns and I've had people in my, that I've invested in even the last couple of years at HPIC, and I'm sure that I've shared things going on with staff, like, that I shouldn't have, or that understanding like, oh man, like if I share that, I need to also make sure I'm reflecting with them. And like, is that hard to hear?
Yeah.
How can I help you process that and walk through that rather than just being like, mommy and daddy are fighting and then like moving on, So I think, I think doing regular just open reflection with the people you're leading and asking like, how are changes hitting them? How are they feeling about them?
Yeah.
And giving them the tools and opportunity to practice like voicing those things in themselves, I think I would do differently.
Yeah.
And so in the first instance, if someone had said like, well, let's pause this drama between party A and party B for a minute and just ask at any point over the course of this 2 years, like, Ryan, how does it feel for you to be in the room for this? And, it would have been hard regardless for me to step up and say, please stop. I want off this ride. But giving people the invitation and the ability just to reflect on how they're feeling, how they're struggling with a change or with hard news, whatever it may be. I think that's one very simple tool, So if you're leading any meeting or interaction with those that you're leading, never let it go just from point A to point B. Okay, we've checked off all the agenda items, and now we can put the agenda away. We can move on and get off the Zoom, whatever. It's like, no, like agenda item number 1 is like, let's set aside the agenda for a minute and look you in the eyes and say like, okay, how are you?
Yes.
Because that's relevant to all this. It's more relevant than anything else. Like the stuff will get done or it won't get done, but like, how are you in this?
And how are we? How are we?
Yeah.
Especially if it's if there's conflict. And I love what you're saying because it integrates the whole self, right? Like we're holistic beings, and sometimes all we do is focus on the task and we forget to ask, how are you feeling? How are you processing? What do you want?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. Just human sensitive leadership, right? Like, I don't know. Yeah. I'll say this again, like that's at least I can say that if we're patterning things after the way of Jesus, that's the way it ought to be happening. I don't know if that works in a Fortune 500. I don't know if that would work in national government or not. But this kind of downwardly mobile, self-sacrificial way of leadership where we're like subordinating the cause or the production or whatever to maintaining right relationship with one another. I'm sure there's costs to that and productivity and whatever, but
and how do you measure success? Yeah, that's what we're called to. If that's what you're starting with, then the other question would be how are you measuring success? If success is measured by productivity, no.
Versus
productive.
Right. Versus like employee happiness and satisfaction and stuff. And I'm sure there's studies that show that if you have higher employee satisfaction, then productivity will follow. Like I'm sure those things, sure there's truth to those realities too. But regardless, even if there wasn't, even if it was just self-sabotaging, just like remembering that in the end, this person in front of me is the point.
Yes.
Is something I have to continually remind myself of.
Yeah.
In my roles.
Yeah. So lastly, when you think about your healing journey, you mentioned a little bit about how it was hard. Like you were alone, you were driving a truck, you were not in an official role. Like during that healing journey, what were some of the pieces, practices, thoughts? Like how did you get from wounding, throbbing wound to, okay, I'm hardly noticing it's there anymore. I mean, the scars will always be there. But tell me a little bit about what the ingredients were, the practices to get there. Yeah.
Well, driving a truck, I highly recommend it because you can just like yell and no one knows. They think, unless they think they're yelling at you as you're yelling at them as they're driving by or whatever, but you can just kind of shout things in the cab of the truck. And I did at times. That was at times really necessary. And then analogously, whether it's shouting in a truck cab or writing it frantically in a journal or voicing it in therapy to get to the point of being able to say out loud, they shouldn't have done that, I think is a healthy step, which is really hard for me personally to say because of a family of origin and all the things. Like it's very hard. It's easier now, but it's still a challenge for me to just say like, they shouldn't have done that. I was wronged. To like say that out loud was really helpful and important for me because otherwise I can kind of internalize things and begin to believe that the wounds were self-inflicted.
Yeah.
And they aren't always, as it turns out.
Yeah. Some of them are, but they're not always. Some of them are,
but not always. And maybe the majority of the time aren't. But so it was important for me to just voice that as a practice. And that's like, lament is a thing in Christian tradition that has been more and less popular and practiced. But that's the important part of it is that there's a power in just voicing injustice, voicing what's wrong. That was really important.
Getting it out.
Otherwise, it'll slip out.
That's right.
When you don't want it to. You know, and there was times early on at HBIC where it's like that was not the situation where that needed to come out,
Yeah.
In interactions with people, even in like job interviews, steeling myself against like, don't let like, you're still pretty raw.
Mm.
I felt it, even going into, doing that job. And so, yeah, voice it when it's appropriate so it doesn't come out other times, because it's in you and it'll come out.
Yeah.
That was a big part of the roadmap for me, and a big learning process for me, reconciling or attempting to reconcile with people for whom I needed to. I did my best with that. Sometimes it was not reciprocated. In one instance, I thought it was reciprocated, and then 2 weeks later realized it wasn't. And that was kind of just as far as it depends on you, be
Yeah.
at peace with those around you. So that came a year later at least, but getting to the point of like, okay, this is really hard to do, but now that I've voiced it in the truck cab, I need to voice it face to face, and I need to own up to the things that I did, and that was important and necessary as well, and healing, and it was angering too when it wasn't reciprocated, or it was, I was jerked around, but I still felt the wound closing up enough to where like, okay, well, I can walk forward and move on. That was a big piece of it. Yeah. And time,
Yes.
it takes how long it takes, right? This is grief. This is,
Mhm.
don't add the extra layer of feeling guilty that you're still
Yeah.
struggling with something, don't add like that meta layer
Yeah.
of, you don't need that.
Yeah.
You don't need to be grieving and wounded and also shamed that you're
Yes.
grieving and wounded.
Yes. Yeah. Because I think that shaming then speaks to ourselves. I mean, that is what shame is. It's about us. And when we are doing things and saying things that keep perpetuating that, that's not healthy. So, yeah, getting it out, whatever capacity of reconciliation is possible, and then grace for the timing.
Yeah. And I think with any grief or wound, like, you just understand you're going to grow around it, but it's not really going to go away. It's like when you losing a family member or a loved one, same deal. Like, so
Your story.
don't wait until, like ever since the day where my parents told me I was getting ice cream and then we didn't get ice cream at the end of the day, I learned something about the world, and I know that now. And
You're not naive anymore. You're not a young, green, naive person.
there's a song in, I don't remember which act it is, in Into the Woods, the musical, about I think it's Little Red Riding Hood, called like I Know Things Now. And it's after she went in through the woods and encountered the wolf and came out the other side. It's like, oh, this is like growing up, is realizing like, oh, growing up is real. And when you're in your 20s,
yeah,
you just are like, this is what life is going to be. This is what my life is going to be. And I'm going to go out and get it. And then you get in your 30s and you're like, oh, it's not. Turns out it isn't. And you have to embrace that. You have to just embrace like, oh, life is not that. And that's grief. That is what it is. I thought this person was going to live another 30 years with me. I thought I was going to work this dream job for 20 years. I thought this is what God was saying for me to do, XYZ down the line, and learning to hold those things more loosely and just walk with the weight of, I know things now, and life isn't what I thought it would be. Just know that that's part of it and something you're going to walk with.
Yeah. I love that imagery of like, I know things now. And the walking with the Lord, we know things now. I mean, He has known these things all along, and He's been walking with us. I remember my first dream job, and I was definitely young, naive, hungry, impressionable, thought everything this person said was going to be happening. But
and thought everything you did was gonna like be a home run,
be gold. And I thought I knew what I wanted. Well, it turns out I really don't know what I want. It turns out that it's not the goal or the vision that's the most important. It's who I'm walking along with as I'm pursuing those things. And it's a journey. And I wouldn't change any of it. I wouldn't change any of it, because it's taught me. I mean, it's who I am today. Did I like the pain? No, but that was part of the process, and that's what's made me to be who I am today.
Yeah. And who you are is in the same way that the point of leadership is the people that you're leading. The point of your journey is who you're becoming.
Yes.
Not what you're accomplishing.
Yeah. Which is difficult, I think, for leaders like us who are wired like that. I think that what I'm accomplishing, that's what the real prize is. Turns out it's not.
Yeah.
Turns out that I don't even really know everything.
And someday you'll die, and then the person you hand it off to will squander it, and you will be forgotten, and all is vanity.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So as we conclude, what is one or two things that you would tell your younger self, i.e. the leaders that you're investing in that are young and growing? What would you tell them?
Yeah, I mean, jumping off the last thought I was having, like what I would tell myself as a young leader is to relax,
Mm,
and that I know it's hard to believe this because you are desperate to validate yourself and to
mhm,
establish yourself, but you are in fact worth more than this job
mm,
and this role. And someday you won't be in this job or role, and you'll still have yourself. So like um, this isn't going to fix that. This isn't going to make you whole.
mm.
It's just going to exacerbate all the ways that you're not. So there's a little bit of I think one of the most healing things that's been told to me is, however important you think it is, however, yeah, it's just a job.
Oh,
Or if for leadership generally, yeah, it's just a job. It's just a role, and you'll have it for a season.
yeah.
But it's just a job.
It's not who
You're a,
you are.
no, you're a person of infinitely more worth than this job or what you would produce in it. That would be the main thing I would say. Like, it's just a job. You do it because you are called to and you have to, and because you're gifted to do it, and that's good. But it's just a job. And even with leaders and leadership, whatever they've told you at the conference, you're not, you're not, you're not getting a special crown in heaven for having, held this position. And if we believe Jesus, then actually, like, to really be a leader would be to face yourself and to lower yourself. So relax a little bit,
Yeah. Everything doesn't rise and fall on you, contrary to popular belief about leaders.
I mean, it can, but those are bad leaders and tyrants, and it doesn't go well for folks.
Yes, I love that, especially the tying your self-worth, your identity to your job. I think it's very normal for us as we're growing and we're young. Lots of young leaders need to be told, you're more than.
It's easy to say on this side. It's easy to say with like a mortgage and a job, or 3 jobs. Like it's easy to say that, I know, versus when you're 23 and folding towels in a PT clinic and like wondering if if you're going to be a failure and the end of your family name.
Yeah. Again, how we measure success, how we measure it. Well, thank you so much for sharing your heart, your story, just your vulnerability and transparency. We need more people who are willing to share what their woundings are and how they have healed, and that it's not the end of the journey, and you won't be in this pain forever.
Yeah.
And you just need to get a job as a truck driver, and I know somebody who could help you out with that.
Yeah. Can we plug your husband's company right now? Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yes. And to those listening, if this conversation resonated with you at all, please pass it on to leaders like yourself. And if you are finding yourself feeling like you want to be living and leading more authentically, I offer a free growth plan consult. It's just a conversation, 30 minutes, and we can talk about how coaching might be helpful in that process of living and leading more authentically. Until next time, lead like you. If you've been sensing you're ready for the next step, more clarity, more living and leading with peace and freedom, then start here. Download your free Authentic Leadership Starter Bundle at authenticleadershipcollective.com, including 10 traps that keep leaders stuck, an 8-minute morning meditation to reconnect with God, plus practical tools to realign with your true self. And if you want support turning this into real lived change so you can live and lead like you, book a free call with me so you can begin today living and leading authentically.